Want to have money without having money? Want to go to stores and get things because you want them? Then use my Horton card. It's reliable, it's no fuss, it's a fancy plastic IOU card that will have you swimming in debt for the rest of your and your offspring's life. And to make sure you feel comfortable with spending money you don't have, we'll use this comedian to make you feel like it's no big thing.
I'm from that TV show that's doing reasonably well, so I've got a sense of humor about spending money on stuff I don't need. Just charge my card, buddy. Whatever. It doesn't really matter to me because I'm mostly excited to get cash back.
Relatable.
I know.
Why use gross paper covered with pictures of dead guys when you can use my square piece of dinosaur carcass with numbers on it? In fact, nowadays, you have to have a square of recycled soda bottle, because how else would you even be able to purchase your online subscription to watching what used to be free, or paying for an expensive education that won't lead to a job? Really, any financial milestone. That's right. To get a roof over your head, you need to earn credit, which is really just showing you own a little square that you have to pay off continually. Somehow that's what makes you trustworthy and shows you're good with money. We've made it impossible to live without our plastic numbers swiper. We're putting chips in some of them now. Look at that. It's kind of a pain in the ass. Also a pain in You can't even use these everywhere. You can use it in some places that pay me to accept your card. Otherwise, you can just use money, which is what people who are taking your money would prefer. I'm an expensive middleman who's charging everyone extra for using my plastic cutout. Also, you'll probably need a different swipey swiper when my card doesn't work at one place where another one does work. Is it harder to keep track of how much you're spending when you don't physically see the presidentially decorated paper strips leaving your hands? We're counting on it, especially when we encourage you to go paperless. We'll say it's for the environment, but it's really because we know if we send you emails of the charges you made, you'll only skim the email, if you're reading them at all. Here's where it gets fun for me and exclusively no one else. We made it so the longer it takes for you to be able to pay us back on time, the more money you'll rack up in interest, and the harder it'll be to pay off. And doesn't that sound like it should be illegal? It's not, it's interest. Interest is a random percentage we charge you because you made charges. This is going to get pretty technical and pretty crimey, so let's look at a graph. If you're the average American credit card holder, then you owe more than $10,000 in debt. Let's say your interest rate is 24.99% and you're paying off just the minimum because times are tough, or, because times are normal. That means that in 10 years, you'll have paid more than $26,000 and still owe over $11,000 more, and that's just 10 years. After 50 years, you'll have paid $165,729 and still owe more than $17,000. So you will always owe me money. But the more you use our card, the more worthless things we'll give you. All right. Yes, let's hear it for stuff, or even better than stuff, cash back, which is just a tiny portion of money that you'll use to pay off the debt. But of course, you'll never see actual money. The more you charge, the more cash back we give you. It's like you're digging a hole and we throw in a handful of dirt to help you get out of the hole, but only after you dig 5 feet deeper. If you're worried you might not be able to pay off this credit card, we'll encourage you to get another card to pay off that one, and then another to pay off that one. The more credit cards, the more you have to pay, and the more you owe us. It's literally the same apparatus as a Ponzi scheme, but we tell you about it with a 300-page tiny printed booklet that you won't read. So get yourself a Horton Card credit card. Go ahead and swipe it through machines till you owe us billions. Oh, is that too harsh? Oh, here. Hey, Laugh Machine, make the people feel better with your jokey words.
Hey, so you guys ever notice how Katy Perry is,
You feel better already, right?
Katy Perry's basically just Zooey Deschanel, but gassier. So.
I'm Roger, by the way.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Speak Your Mind. We're here live through our TV channel, whether also online, Facebook, YouTube, Tuber, wherever it is that we appear on your screen, and we bring you another topic. And this time it has to do with credit cards. What do you think about credit cards? Is it possible to trust credit cards, or do you think we often misuse them? Whether it's an Amex, whether it's any other type of card that you can think of, we got it. We got them all. You can call us right now, 877-785-8700, or through WhatsApp, 437-233-9815. I am not alone, but I'm here with my co-host, Mrs. Audrey. Miss Audrey, how you doing?
Hello, I'm well, thank you. Welcome all again to another episode of Speak Your Mind. And it's a very interesting topic that we have prepared for you today. Credit cards. Is it a scam? What do you think about it? Does it really help your credit? What do you have to say about it? Let us know and chime in on this topic. And as always, we have prepared for you our Telegram poll that you can go ahead and scan the QR code and vote on the following. Do you think is it possible to trust credit cards, or do we often misuse them? Let us know what you think, and we'll be announcing the results during our show.
And as if things couldn't get worse, they started appearing now on your phone. Yes, you can have them any way, shape, or form. And I think we already have one of our first callers. Let's see if we can connect them now. Hello, Juan. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
How you doing, Juan?
I'm doing pretty good.
Juan, we're asking everybody about our topic tonight, which is credit cards. Do you think, Juan, that credit cards are something that we can trust, or do you think us as human beings often misuse them?
I believe credit cards they could be your best friend, depending how you use it. It could get you out of a tight spot, and of course, it does build your credit, so you're able to give more stuff out, the things you need, essentials, and things like that. So I think they're a good tool.
Now, Juan, do you agree with a certain phrase? There are some people who they help others when it comes to building credit, and they often say, you let the money work for you. Is that something that can be attached to credit cards?
Definitely. Yes, it does help you, but you have to be responsible and paying it off on time. They use the 15-3 rule a lot, so it does help your credit and build it up, and yes, I do agree with it.
And now, as someone who touches upon the things with tax returns, etc., is there often a problem that you see when people go to you and ask for help in regards to their credit cards?
It could, not a problem. It helps them a lot, especially if you have your own business and you use the credit card just for the business. It gets you a lot of deductions, a lot of credits for you, and that way you don't have to pay taxes. And you might be receiving taxes instead.
Miss Audrey, did you?
I did. I actually wanted to know, what is that rule that you mentioned? I haven't heard of that one.
The one you pay, you do a double payment on your credit card. One you pay 15 days before your payment due, or you pay half of it, and then the other half you pay 3 days before the payment is due. So the credit bureau sees 2 payments done, and it benefits you a lot.
Juan, everybody in the production team is jotting this down as we speak. They are definitely going to put this into practice. So you think basically credit cards could be your best friend. Do you think that there is a certain type of person or type of mentality that maybe should stay away from credit cards?
Yes, the ones that do when they're depressed, when they're lonely, when they're sad, they just shop just to be happy. Yeah, stay away from credit cards, because when you buy and you don't have that money to back it up and pay at the end of the month, you're gonna be in trouble.
So this person who's watching us, there's somebody who's responsible. They're that person who probably keeps money under their mattress. They're probably sticking to their debit card, whether it's a BMO, whether it's a TD Bank, whatever it may be. You think they can even take a step to better themselves, to better their name in the country by getting a credit card?
Definitely. I know I use Amex. So for any daily use, it's gas, groceries, movies, anything that I have the money for it, I use it. And at the end of the month, pay for it, because that money's already going to be wasted anyways, regardless if you use the debit or anything, right? And I know I heard the commercial about points. You get points. Yeah, so if you use a debit card, you don't get any benefits. You don't get any points. If you use a credit card and you're going to pay it at the end of the month, you're going to accumulate points. And all that, it benefits you a lot. Take advantage of it.
Juan, thank you so much for speaking your mind, for sharing your opinion with us tonight. Have a good one, okay?
All right. Thank you for having me.
Take care. You can call us right now in this moment if you have an opinion. If you have a comment, 877-785-8700. Mrs. Audrey, I saw that you were writing down as he was explaining the rule.
I'm trying to get all these tips to benefit myself, better my name here, having some credit.
I
should too.
I overheard Alfredo in the back jumping for joy. I never heard that either.
Right.
But let's go to our following video. Which Canadians might struggle the most to pay off their student loans? And we'll be right back.
Even the idea that I'll one day potentially, hypothetically, be able to pay back $100,000 is pretty wild to me.
Six-figure debt for going to school, and it's only what one person owes.
It's one of those like imaginary numbers that you feel like you'll never actually touch.
This is Alexandra Fox. She's been racking up debt ever since she started school in 2008. Her debt is only a small slice of what all Canadians owe in student loans, $36 billion. And that's just what they owe to the government. Best case scenario, 4 out of 10 people will pay off their student debt within 3 years of graduating. And odds are, Fox is not one of them. Here's how Fox racked up her debt in the first place. She first got her bachelor's degree in design and fashion communications at Ryerson in 2013. She got a line of credit for $10,000 to pay for extra things like rent and food.
I actually didn't have to have any student debt for my first degree. I was extremely privileged to have my parents pay for it.
But she decided to switch careers completely, and this is where her debt started. She did her master's in interdisciplinary studies 2 years later. With a $30K price tag, she needed a little help. She took on a line of credit of $15,000 to pay this back, bringing her total up to $25K. Then to up her education even more, she pursued a second master's, this time in occupational therapy. This is the most expensive part of her education, priced at $32,000. She got an $80K line of credit, absorbing the $25K she already owed. Then she added on another $25K. Her grand total is $105,000.
Thinking about that being the number that I'm in debt is pretty scary. The majority of my friends all have student debt, and it's funny that we don't really talk about it because some of my friends have managed to pay off most or all of it, and other friends of mine are in the same situation as me, and they're, negative $100,000.
A typical bachelor student pays more than $6,000 a year. On average, this is about 30% more than they did a decade ago. It's a number that's getting bigger over time, with the exception of 2019, when the average tuition fee actually dipped thanks to an almost $900 price cut in Ontario. But the general cost across Canada has been way outpacing the rate of inflation.
The cost of education keeps going up, and so as a result, student loans keep going up. So we're heading to continued worse problems for students as time goes on. So yes, it's very scary. It's very troublesome.
This is Doug Hoyes. He's been studying the student debt crisis, and what he found was more bad news for Fox. She may have a hard time paying off her debt because she's a woman. He found they were less likely to be employed when they owed money than men who had student debt. And most of the grants the Canadian government doled out between 2016 and 2017 were for women. But even if women do get jobs, they might have to take on newer expenses other than student debt.
If they want to become mothers in their lifetime, they're always factoring parenthood into their education and their career choices. So women are always doing the math of when can I fit having a baby either in school or in their career.
And having a kid will cost you. After having their first child, women 25 to 35 had what they earned slashed by nearly 50%.
These kind of absences from the workplace can very negatively affect their long-term earning potential, and that's what contributes to their student loan debts and potentially falling behind on their debt repayment.
This means that women who want to pay off their debts might have to put off having kids. So while Fox and women like her might find herself in a balancing act down the line, the education she earned has already put her ahead of more than 10% of students who drop out during their first year. These people are competing in a job market where most people graduate from college or university. That means those who drop out are leaving school missing necessary skills in that coveted piece of paper, making it harder to find a job.
It worries me that we are forcing teenagers at the age of 17 to be picking universities and university courses and colleges and not fully understanding what the full costs are. And it's only when they're done that they realize they've got a significant student loan and they're not able to find a job earning enough to repay that debt.
It's really scary thinking that you've invested all of this money into this professional program and professional kind of designation, and there's not a job out there for you at the end of it.
As for if Fox will land a job to dig her out of the 100K, she is nearly ruling out working in Canada and instead aiming to work in the US. She'll get paid in American dollars. Plus, the typical salary for an occupational therapist is higher in the States at $85,000. Her plan is to pay back up to $1,000 a month. And at that rate, it will take her just over 8 years to pay it all back.
It doesn't actually feel real. And now I'm still in school, so I feel like when I'm working and I actually am starting to make those payments, it's gonna feel a lot more real.
Here in Canada, the country's housing agency is calling attention to a potential storm of another kind. CTV's Heather Wright explains.
Canadian households owe more in debt than the value of Canada's entire economy, with nearly 3/4 of that debt tied to mortgages.
Because of the absence of housing supply, Canadians are just piling up the debt. This is creating a lot of risks.
Aled Abiorwith wrote the report for the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation and says this debt has put the country's economy at a higher risk in the event of a global economic crisis like a recession.
We're not predicting it, but if there are widespread job losses, then paying off mortgages in that circumstance is really difficult.
Canada's level of household debt is the highest in the G7 and has been growing for years. In 2008, it was 80% of GDP, 95% in 2010, and 100% in 2020. Now it's up to 107%.
This is a story about real estate. It's a story about very high house prices.
One of the solutions to bringing down those sky-high home prices is to, of course, build more houses, apartments, and rental units. But rising interest rates are now threatening to cool the construction industry as well.
One of the big drivers of economic growth in Canada, which is household construction and renovation, will be substantially constrained by these much higher interest rates.
The Bank of Canada's aggressive rate hike cycle began last year, aimed at reining in runaway inflation. And while the consumer price index has fallen, it's still well off the central bank's inflation target of 2%.
Start putting some money aside in a rainy day fund to handle those higher payments should rates remain elevated for the next few years.
The Bank of Canada has not raised interest rates since January, but has suggested another rate hike may be necessary this year, with its next announcement in 2 weeks. Heather Wright, CTV News, Toronto.
And we're back with all of you with our topic for today. Reminding all of you guys that if you want to, you can scan the QR code that's going to take you to the app called Telegram. And there you're going to join our channel, you're going to join our chat, where you're going to be able to decide on our poll about credit cards. Do you think that credit cards are something that we can trust, or do we often misuse them? Mrs. Audrey, do we have any comments?
Yes, we have Jesse that already says like this. Many people will take a loan or apply for a credit card for something that they need in the moment, but forget to take it back. Interest accumulates and in turn results in hurting rather than helping. We also have Billy that says like this. As long as you pay off your bill every month, credit cards are fine and are actually more safe than using a debit card. And so as you will see that we're receiving messages from Facebook, YouTube, you can chime in through Twitter, any of our social media as it appears on your screen. You can go ahead and follow us and stay tuned because we have a lot of insight that is coming, people that are going to be sharing their opinions, and specialists that are actually going to be answering our questions that we have prepared today.
Yes, and I think we have Ashley on the phone. Let's see if we can connect her now. Ashley, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Ms. Ashley, we have been waiting for you to get your insight on credit cards. Do you think, Mrs. Ashley, that credit cards are something that we cannot trust, or do you think that we are the ones that often misuse them?
I think it has its pros and cons. A lot of people get credit cards because at the moment they don't have the funds that they need. But what they don't like is that when the bill comes, they don't like paying it back. So a lot of people misuse the credit cards. There is perks as far as like whenever you travel, you get to, instead of you paying for your flight or paying for your vacation, you can use those points that you earn throughout the throughout you spending the money. They convert it into points. So that's a perk. But I think a lot of people don't know how to use the credit cards, and I have an average here of people that are in debt just in credit cards, age group. So for example, ages 18 through 25 are in debt $8,000 just in credit card debt. And the ages of 26 to 35 are in debt nearly $18,000, which means that and it keeps continue going more up, the averages. Like for example, the 36 to 45 age range, they're in debt nearly $30,000 just in credit card debt. And this is Canadians. So I believe that a lot of people probably lost, and the time now, they probably lost their jobs and they rely on credit cards. But I think that a lot of people do misuse it. So they either go out and buy, fancy Gucci, Prada, whatever. But in my opinion, a lot of people misuse credit cards.
Now, Ms. Ashley, do you think that the cons weigh out the pros? Or do you think to somebody responsible, to somebody who knows how to manage their spending or their impulses, do you think that it's something that always serves in their favor?
I think that if a person has a credit card, they have to have self-control, because it is tempting to go out there knowing that you have a credit card of, for example, the Amex that has no limits. You can literally buy a car, the most expensive car, and you're still going to be paying for it. But I believe that there is, in my opinion, I would take that over not having a credit card. You know what I mean?
From my production team, Carlos, he thanks you because now he's going to apply for an Amex. He's going to get a car.
Actually, I do have
that
a
was
question
a very
for
dangerous card.
I think Ms. Audrey has a question. Yes, Ms.
Yes, I do. I wanted to ask you, is there a specific credit card that people, are mostly go for? Is there certain perks, benefits, or are all of them equally the same, that have the same benefits, or people should kind of look into?
There's different credit cards that have different perks. My favorite one is the United Explorer one, which I haven't paid for a flight in I don't know how long. And the reason why is because you learn, after years of having a credit card, you learn how to use it. So I can pay my rent there and use those points, or I can pay my car note or something, my bills, and all of those points add up and that turn into a spending amount to purchase your vacation, etc. So in my preference, it will be the United Explorer card.
Mrs. Audrey just finished jotting it down. She's going to go and apply for a United Explorer
That's the
card.
thing. We got to go and apply for it first. We have to do the process. And speaking on that note, a lot of people don't actually read the fine print, right? I want to say, is that often the case where they don't really see the percentage of interest that they have to pay back for the credit card that they're using?
Normally they don't. They just say, oh, okay, I got approved for 5,000, 10,000. And on credit cards, it's a higher interest rate. The average interest rate is between 15 to 27, 29, 30%, which is high. It's really high. So you're let's say you're paying a balance of $300. Half of that is going to go towards interest, if not more. So I recommend a lot of people, before applying, to learn about the credit card, the perks, the pros and cons, and to see the fine prints that is very on below, to see the percentage. And before, getting excited to know whether they can afford it or not.
Now, Ms. Ashley, last thing, just a little scenario that I want to run through you through one of the comments that we received. Let's say somebody has a credit card limit of $1,000, and let's say they spent in that month $400. Their remaining balance is $600, yet obviously they're going to have to pay off those $400. Do you suggest they pay all $400 in one shot, or is there some type of technique that the credit bureau can look at and kind of swindle it in their favor so they don't have to pay all of it at once?
So what the creditors want to see is that you don't use the whole entire amount. So my recommendation for that person is you don't have to pay the whole entire 400, but keep a 3% credit card usage, because then the creditor is going to see, wait, this person doesn't need a credit card because they're paying it off. So 3% is the average of what a creditor looks for. And if they want to know the tricks, what I recommend is them seeing their statement and seeing the billing cycle when it ends. So for example, let's say they need to pay their bill on the 21st and your billing cycle closes on the 18th. So you want to pay before the 3%, and then after the mark, after it reflects on your credit, on the credit bureaus, you're able to either max it out, but before the date comes, you need to pay it off towards that 3%. That way it won't hurt your credit score.
Perfect. Miss Ashley, Miss Audrey, we're good?
All
Studio
good.
production, is everybody good?
All good.
Miss Ashley, thank you so much for speaking your mind, for sharing your thoughts, and for giving us that insight for people who probably don't have a credit card and are looking to get one and can manage it in their favor. Have a good night, Miss Ashley.
Thank you for having me. Good night.
877-785-8700. Our next video, repaying debt is the #1 financial goal for Canadians. And then after, we are going to be seeing what the streets of Toronto had to say about our topic. We'll be right back.
Repaying debt is the #1 goal for Canadians financially next year. According to a new CIBC poll, other top priorities include keeping up with bills and growing investments, increasing savings, and avoiding debt, and also saving for a vacation. The poll also finds that Canadians have concerns about inflation, rising interest rates, and general recessionary fears. Well, Jamie Golombek is a managing director of tax and estate planning with CIBC, joining us in studio now to talk more about this. Jamie, great to meet you. Thanks for being here this morning.
My pleasure.
So this poll is really interesting about the recessionary fears of Canadians, and that, of course, that's going to impact your investments and your tax planning indeed. What does the poll find about how concerned Canadians are for the coming financial year?
I think Canadians are concerned. They're concerned about, obviously, their personal debt levels. They're concerned about rising interest rates, but most importantly, of course, inflation. The cost of things are getting more expensive, and Canadians are having to struggle to try to make those ends meet every single month. So they are worried about that. And of course, looming in the background is the fear of a recession in 2023 as well.
So that psychology of fear, we don't know for sure yet that Canada necessarily will be in a recession next year, but there is that fear. Does that sometimes make it real, that in terms of when people are so afraid of a recession that they stop spending, that it can actually trigger more of it, or there's greater factors involved?
Yeah, I think there's greater economic factors. If it's really the strength of the economy, and we'll have to see how that develops in 2023. Obviously, interest rates, will they go up a little bit further? We're not really sure. All that really plays into a sort of an economic situation for 2023.
So, Jamie, when it comes to people sort of, maybe they're sitting down, putting pen to paper, taking a look at their investment statements, their, bank statements, et cetera, and they're kind of trying to come up with a plan. And we sort of hear that time and time again. It's, well, make a financial plan. It sounds good on paper, but what are some of the best tips that you can give people to sort of try to set themselves up for a bit of better financial success next year?
Yeah, I think now is the best time of all, especially if you're off on vacation or things are a little slow the next week or so, is put together a budget. I think a cash flow budget for 2023, looking at it on a month-by-month basis or maybe a quarterly basis. Try to look at all your expenses this past year. You can go on to online banking. You can download all your transactions, either your checking account, your Visa, your MasterCard. See where you spent the money and see, are there ways to sort of tighten things up if necessary in 2023? Look at sources of income that are coming in, look at your job security, but put together a plan, not just about the investing side, but more importantly about the spending side. Are there things that we can do proactively going into 2023 to preserve that cash flow?
Do you find when you're working with your clients that they're a bit surprised sometimes when they sort of sit down and sort of figure out a budget, perhaps how much they've spent on items that they really, maybe even just like your morning cup of coffee?
Yeah, well, I mean, the coffee, we've been talking about that for a decade now, but I think the focus now is on all those streaming apps.
Yes.
People, certainly during the pandemic, have accumulated multiple subscriptions that they forget they have. And that's an easy thing to fix. You just go online and take a look at a monthly statement, whether it's your automatic debits from your checking account or maybe it's from your credit card, and you can easily tally up. And, if you're still using those streaming, great, very inexpensive form of entertainment. But if it's something you haven't used in months, there's an easy way to slash a few $100s a year, potentially from your family budget.
That's so true, because you're right. I mean, they kind of, especially during the pandemic, right? The streaming services, effectively crept up on you because you felt like you were indoors and all you could do was kind of watch what was going on the
That's
screen.
right.
So, I mean, I know my family, we loaded up on a few of those, and you're right, you got to sort of check those things out. But beyond, streaming necessarily, what are when it comes to like planning for next year beyond a budget, what other things would you tell people to sort of say, hey, this is how you can sort of like sharpen your financial focus in a way?
Yeah, well, I think, it comes back to the poll and the results on debt and debt repayment. And I believe that certainly if you've got credit card debt, that should be your number one focus for 2023. I wouldn't even save for retirement if you have a credit card debt. Credit card debt, the interest rate's running around 20%. Where can you get a guaranteed rate of return of 20% annually after tax, other than paying down debt? So I think anyone who has credit card debt, and that was a concern of many of the people in our survey, should focus on that. And that should be part of that monthly budget. Set aside a bit of money every month to pay down that debt, try to get it all paid off in 2023, and then focus on other longer term goals like saving for retirement.
Jamie, I've never heard anybody say that, but that really does make a whole lot of sense as we sort of look towards the new year. Thanks so much for being here this morning. Do appreciate these and these tips too.
My pleasure.
All right, take care.
Do you think that nowadays credit cards have been given a bad rep, or do you think it's still good?
Credit card is good because I think you can collect lots of points every time you purchase. Cash is good also when the power goes out. And credit card, if you purchase something, you always have like 60 days to complain, and they'll give you your money back after an investigation. So credit card is good in that sense.
They're still being very good because people need sometimes to buy stuff and to afford stuff. And the banks and the people with business know they can trust that person because she has a credit card. And it's good to help a lot of people. Just, you need to be smart, you need to use and pay, and don't get too much interest if you can afford.
Have you ever had a bad experience with a credit card or know anybody with a bad experience?
No, sweetheart. Whoever has the bad experience, I help. Once upon a time, I helped my niece.
My family had the same problem, that they had problems of credit cards, because when it's, we borrow a lot of money and it's 20% or more than 20% the interest. So that's the bad thing.
No, not really. I didn't really have a bad experience with credit because you always have a secure transaction. You could always enter your PIN whenever you purchase, and the minimum is like $100 a tap. So, and if you ever experience fraud, just call them and complain, and they'll normally refund your money after a nice investigation.
I know a few people who have had bad experiences. They're these days very dangerous. A lot of hackers trying to get into them. And yeah, they're acting like the companies, so you don't know who it is anymore.
Would you recommend for people right now better not to have a credit card?
Just be careful. That's all I would say is be careful.
You were mentioning about how to build credit scores.
Yeah, and credit card help you build your credit score because if you always use cash and use debit, you don't have no credit history. So it's good to use your credit card. Use a credit card and then use your cash to pay the credit card, and that way you can build your credit.
And we're back with all of you. Mrs. Audrey, do we have any more comments?
We do. We have a comment that actually is more like a tip that I'd like to share with everyone that says like this. Credit cards should be used for everyday use. Buy things you were already going to pay with your debit card and keep the balance under 30% of your credit limit. When your payment is due and your credit will skyrocket. So there we have it, a tip and guideline for when you have to use your credit card, right? There's a lot of times where we kind of don't know when to decide whether we use our debit card, credit card, what's the benefits, and that's what we're going to be speaking about today on our show, credit cards. What do you have to say about it?
Thank you. And I think we have Alex now on the phone. Let's see if we can connect him. Alex, can you hear us?
Yes, sir.
Alex, we're asking everybody the following question about credit. Do you think credit cards are something that we can trust, or do you think it's us that often misuse them?
It's actually a bit of both. So credit cards are essentially the best way to build credit. But the problem is a lot of people overspend and then they get themselves into debt, and that's where the problem comes in.
Do you think more people are overspending? Do you think there's more cons or pros?
I wouldn't say it's really more of a pro factor, but the cons there's more pros and cons. However, the cons that it does have are very overpowering, because debt leads to a lot of people ending up, getting sent to collections and charge-offs. Because in the lending industry that I've been in, I see that a lot, because and mind you that the credit reports that I look at, they're not, your everyday kind of people. They're doctors, they're surgeons, there's nurses, and with the kind of money they make, I see that the debt that they get into, and then you figured someone like that has someone that makes $200,000 a year, would be good with their money, and then they're not. So
Alex, as you just mentioned about that, the difference between maybe even professionals, people that would say that maybe they don't even need to have a credit card, but are still using it and are still falling into debt. What do you think is the problem there?
The problem is just that they trust themselves too much. And once you get into that hole, it's very hard to climb out of. Credit cards are the best way to build credit. Yes, you can have a house. Yes, you can have a car. But essentially, there's a lot of lenders who will look at your credit report and be like, yeah, you're paying your house on time, but I don't care about that. Because the person with the worst credit in the world is going to pay their house. The person with the worst credit in the world is going to pay their car, because what happens, they get repossessed. Credit cards show stability. They show that you are responsible, and they show that, you're making your payments on time. So that's why credit cards, they are the best way to build credit, because they don't close. They stay revolving. Whereas loans, you pay that off in a year and then it closes and boom, you're back to zero.
Yes. I've heard of that as well. So it's like the credit cards that you have, it's kind of like showing that you're a person trustworthy enough to be able to pay back that money, you can say.
Correct.
All right.
And Alex, quick question. So the people who are watching us right now, right? You said that there are a lot of pros. You said there are a lot of cons. When it comes to people that you lend, right? Whether it's a credit union, is there ever someone that you are speaking to who's applying that you kind of look at and you kind of go, I don't feel right loaning money to this person? Or do you think maybe a certain type of characteristic within that person kind of can hinder the success that a credit card can bring to them?
It happens. It does happen a lot, because most of the times I don't really have any communication or contact with them until like the day comes and they have to sign. That's when I see them for the first time a lot. So a lot of the stuff is really I just pull the credit report, and that's where my communication with them begins.
And what about when it's bad?
I'm sorry?
What happens when you look at the credit report and it's not looking so good? How do you
If
break
it's
it
not
to
looking so
them?
good, there's a lot of things to look at. Like, for example, let's say they have a lot of collections and charge-offs. Let's say we go back and see when it happened. You're like, okay, so they have 6, 7 charge-offs from 6 years ago, and they're all in the same time frame. That's when you start asking questions like, hey, what happened here? Oh, I lost my job. Oh, I went through a divorce. That makes sense. It aligns with what happened there. And since then, let's say they've gotten one credit card or a loan and they've been good with that. Well, it shows that since then they've been good. Obviously there's some where you're just like, nah, you just let this go 3 months ago. Like I'm not going to lend you anything. So there's a lot that you can look at in a credit report to see whether or not you're making the correct choice in lending. And it's never 100% guaranteed, but that's how you're able to at least, remove some out of the pool of people you will lend to.
Alex, thank you so much for sharing your insight, for speaking your mind. Have a good night, okay?
Good night, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
877-785-8700. And now on to our next video about credit card debt that has spiked as the interest rates here in Canada also rise. We'll be right back.
The data shows credit card debt went up by more than 15%. Consumer debt in total rose 6%. Non-mortgage debt up 5.4%. Non-mortgage debt for millennials rose by over 8%. Equifax says the effects of high interest rates are still not being fully felt on some homeowners because they haven't renewed their mortgages. The monitoring agency also says younger Canadians are relying on credit because of high inflation. With me now is Rebecca Oakes, Vice President of Advanced Analytics with Equifax Canada. Good morning. Thank you for being with us to discuss this. First of all, are you surprised? Were you guys surprised to see that credit card debt has really soared in the last 3 months?
I mean, it's not a huge surprise. Obviously, we have some seasonality that comes in because it is the holiday period. And we saw throughout 2022, we saw spend really starting to increase. You know, I think the actual growth which we saw in the last quarter, that definitely was higher than we were expecting. And it's kind of coming from two things. As you said, it's coming from those consumers who are really feeling the pinch financially. And it's also coming because we did have some population growth above average in the last 2 quarters. So it's kind of coming from a couple of areas.
So credit card debt, according to Equifax, now totals more than $100 billion for the first time. How concerning is this and why?
It is a little bit concerning in the sense of where some of that growth is coming from. So, you know, what we're seeing right now is we are seeing some of the younger consumers. We're seeing it mainly in some of the lower income segments of the population. That's where some of that growth is really starting to come from. And they're the areas where we are a little bit concerned as well, because they tend to be the ones where we're seeing more missed payments coming through. Now, credit card debt in itself isn't bad. It's whether or not the individual can continue to make payments on that. So they're kind of the areas we're a little bit worried about.
Well, let's dig a little bit deeper on that one, that younger people are racking up more debt. How do you see that playing out moving forward? What are the implications of that on young people who are just really getting a handle on their credit?
I mean, it's definitely going to be a challenging period for those consumers, you know. I mean, I think all of us, we know, you know, as you go to the grocery store, as you go to kind of buy new things, everything's costing more and more because inflation is still high. So I think it is going to be a challenge for those younger consumers for a period of time. And then later in the year, I think what we are concerned about is then future payment shocks for a different part of the population. So those mortgage holders who are coming up for renewals, you know, interest rates may be significantly higher than they were when they took out that mortgage. So, you know, there are a couple of areas where right now it might be the younger and lower income segments where we're seeing the most stress. But, you know, fast forward, you know, a quarter or two, that could start to shift to kind of a little bit older consumers and homeowners as well.
And what are some of the consequences of not paying your credit card bill every month, or at least not making the payments, Rebecca?
I mean, obviously, the first thing is, you know, your own well-being. It's not great when you enter in a situation where you know you have debts to pay and you are unable to make those payments. That in itself can have an impact on the individual. I mean, from a credit standpoint, you know, as soon as you miss payments, that does start to impact your profile. You know, how you look to other lenders in terms of credit, it can start to impact things like your credit score. So, you know, it's really important if you are facing some financial difficulties to have those conversations with lenders. There are plenty of organizations out there that can help with budgeting and things. So there are options and ways to get help, but it certainly can help, you know, it certainly can impact your ability to get future credit if you miss payments.
Rebecca, thank you so much. Rebecca Oakes is the Vice President of Advanced Analytics with Equifax Canada.
It's no secret that Canadians are feeling stretched.
I stopped going out, and I don't even have Wi-Fi anymore.
I used to live in downtown, so I moved back home.
4170. Between the higher cost of living and higher interest rates meant to wrangle inflation, it appears many Canadians have racked up costly debt.
Half of my paycheck is going into like paying off the credit card.
It's just ridiculous. Housing is too expensive, food is too expensive, childcare is too expensive.
Now, a warning from the National Housing Agency. Canadian households have the highest debt levels in the G7. If a recession or other unexpected crisis takes hold, the CMHC says families and the entire economy will be more vulnerable.
If people lose their jobs, they can't service their debt, their mortgage, and that leads to a major problem.
Canada's housing crisis is a central factor here. 3/4 of household debt is tied to mortgages. The CMHC says any attempt to address this looming problem should start with making housing more affordable.
Governments need to get together with the private sector to build more housing, get the supply side of housing working.
Still, it's also a call to Canadians to get their debt levels under control. But it's a difficult task for those who can barely afford the necessities.
If you've renewed your mortgage at any point in the last year, your housing costs are a lot higher, transportation is higher. So it's all of those expenses going up far faster than income.
This bankruptcy advisor says it's been his busiest month in years, a troubling trend that may be tough to turn around.
In a lot of cases, people don't have any choice. You can't just stop eating food because it went up in cost. So yes, we are in a crunch now.
A crunch that could get tighter when Canada's central bank makes its next interest rate announcement in just a few weeks. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
And we're back with all of you. Mrs. Audrey, I think we finally have the results of our poll.
We do, Pastor. So the following question, as we have said it, is it possible to trust credit cards or do we often misuse them? 38% say people can absolutely misuse credit cards and result in debt. 8% say that we don't really need them, and the 54% that say credit cards are essential and have great benefits. So there we have it for tonight.
Thank you so much. And a little bit more about our topic. Maybe you're someone who has debated getting a credit card, or maybe you're somebody who's maxed out all of your credit cards because things financially now aren't looking so good for you. Maybe you're at your wit's end. Maybe you've already gotten a loan, you've gotten 2 loans. You've already had to sell your car. You've had to sell your house. You've gone bankrupt. Your business didn't go so well. And you're asking, you're looking around, you're hoping on a prayer. But the thing is, He just doesn't want you to pray. God, He wants you to test Him. I know, maybe it's contrary to what you normally hear about God. But look at what His word says. His word says the following. Try me now in this. That's what He says. Try me now in this, if I will not open for you the windows of heaven and pour out for you such a blessing that there will not be room enough to receive it. You see that right there? Let's see if we can split the screen if possible. This right there, that's exactly what God is promising. God is promising to open the windows of heaven, all of that, and pour down blessings until it's over in abundance. Look at what God wants to do in your life. But what's the requirement? To pray? No, you already prayed. You've already done so much. But He wants you to try. He wants you to test. He wants you to have all that faith that you have inside, and He wants you to manifest it. And when you come here to our temple, you're going to find out how you can be able to do that. But I want to do something with you right now. We're not going to take no pause. I'm going to do this right now. I have with me a cup of water. I want to pray for you right now in this moment. I'm not going to pray so that God can heal you from every single sickness. No. I want to pray so that God can give you strength. God can give you strength. So wherever it is that you're watching us right now, God gives you that strength so that you leave your home tomorrow, so that you leave your home this Sunday at 10 o'clock in the morning, and you can be here with us so that you can see how you can test God and see those windows open. If the studio team, meanwhile I pray, I want you to put the images that we just had of the heavens over, all right? You who are watching us now are on this other side of the screen. I want you to do something different. If you have a cup of water with you, perfect. If you don't worry. But extend your hand now to me. Extend it. You can go. And I'll extend mine to you. You ready? Let's pray. My God, in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, I know that there are people right now, my Lord, who have situations in their lives that as much as they've tried, as much, my Father, as they knocked on doors, as they applied, my Father, to go forward, they haven't been able to. But my Lord, you promise, you said, try me now in this, if I will not open the windows of heaven and pour down blessing until it's over in abundance. As these heavens, my Lord, on the screen, although it can be a video, my Lord, that was found, it's exactly that you want to open. You want to restore this person. You want to free this person from misery, from poverty. You want to take this person out of that hell that they've been living. You want to remove from them that depression, that sadness, that darkness. You want to restore, my Lord. You want to give back to them in double what once was taken from them. My Lord, I determine this person free from the shackles of evil, free from the shackles of poverty, and I determine them strengthened. Receive right now in this moment strength that comes from God. Receive right now in this moment that strength. In Jesus Christ's name, and you who believe, say amen. Amen. If you have your water, drink of this water now in Jesus' name and receive strength. Amen. We know that usually in moments like this, in moments of prayer, we ask God for strength and we talk in a calm voice. But if you're living in misery, there's no way you can be calm. You have to look for the solution. And this program, this prayer comes to you not as a coincidence, not because there was nothing else on TV. That this program comes to you as a sign from God that if you're in misery right now, if everything is destroyed in your life, He's giving you the opportunity to be free. And He wants to do that. This Sunday, 10 o'clock in the morning, we want you to be with us in our gathering of faith in miracles. 2420 Dufferin Street. We're right there on the corner of Bowie Avenue. You can take the 29 bus, the 929 bus. You can call your Uber right there. That's the address. If you want to take a photo, you can definitely do so. But this Sunday, we want you to come so that you can learn how to test God. And you're going to see the windows of heaven open in your favor. God bless all of you. We'll see you soon.
Join thousands of people every Sunday at 10 a.m. in one faith. Based on this word, again, I say to you that if two of you agree on earth concerning anything that they ask, it will be done for them by my Father in heaven. Matthew 18:19. Receive the 7 prayers.
I don't know how long I had that disease, but the way I found out is I had went to the doctor to have my annual physical. So they called me about the results and told me to get to the hospital because my sugar was so high that I was threatening a stroke. So I participated in drinking the blessed water faithfully. I did it every day. I just continued in my faith and coming to the church and fighting against it.
Deliverance.
I was a victim of witchcraft. My mother sacrificed me since I was young. I couldn't walk. I was paralyzed for a long time. I don't remember half of my life. I remember being in the hospital. It was King County Hospital. I remember that I had to learn how to walk. I had to learn how to write. I saw demons. People think that evil is not real. It is real. I went to a lot of churches, like 23 Christian church. And I never felt like I felt when I came to the Universal Church. But when I came to this ministry, from the very first time that I stepped through that door, I knew there was hope in this church.
Prosperity.
I had a business that was doing at one point rather well and went down substantially, and experienced just hard times trying to bring it up. I experienced also 3 deaths in my family. My mother, my father, my brother passed away. Then we had the recession, and I really never recovered from that. And it's still hard times, but since I've been coming to the church here, my business is starting to recoup. I see opportunities where my phone is ringing. I want this house built. I want this done. my business is starting to take off to another dimension.
Family.
I was about to separate with my husband, and during the time I was coming to church, I learned to forgive. And when I learned to forgive, I started working on my relationship with my husband. And when my husband never opened up to me, never told me what was going on with his life, until one day I got a knock on the front door, and it turned out to be the police. And I had to learn, okay, God, you are here. I learned through the church, through tribulations, you use your faith. And that's when I said, hey, that God is talking to me. This is a way I'm going to find a solution to my problem.
Love life.
And my husband and I were very happy, loving. Everybody in the neighborhood know us and always want their relationship to be like our relationship. Our relationship was an example that people wants to follow. Until one day I found out that my husband had someone else. And that turned me into a bitter and an angry person. Me surrendering my life to the Lord, I got baptized, was filled with the Holy Spirit. Now I have no hate. I'm not angry. I want to even save other people. Try to counsel other people who are going through problems in their marriage.
Encounter with God.
The suffering in my life, it started with me just basically having pain all over my body. And my mom took me to the doctor. They could not figure out what was wrong with me. I started having headaches, and the headaches get worse. It would go like from maybe a day, 2 days, 3 days. Then I started to have stomach pain. My whole body was in pain. And I just felt like something, just like a brick drop on my head. And I had that headache. It was so bad. And I was sweating. I felt like I was going to pass out. I wake up one Sunday morning and I'm coming to church and I'm like, I'm not leaving the church today without giving my life to God. I'm going to baptize today. And I came to church. Service is finished. I got baptized. And I never looked back.
Temple of Miracles, 2420 Dufferin Street, Toronto. 2420 Dufferin Street, Toronto. And every